Welcome to Developer History. My name is Copyright, and today we are looking at Batman Arkham Asylum, originally released in 2009 for PC, PS3, and Xbox 360. It nearly had a release for the Wii and DS, but we will go into that a bit later. Arkham Asylum is widely recognized for being the Batman game. Not only was the gameplay adapted into others like Marvel Spider-Man, Ghost of Tsushima, and Sleeping Dogs, but this game was so huge, it really changed a lot for the entire perception around Batman in general. This sounds pretty cliche and unbelievable, but trust me, this is all going to make sense soon. Anyway, let's not delay any further. You guys can kick back and relax while I describe to you, in very exhaustive detail, the full development history of Batman Arkham Asylum. Before we start, let's give a crash course on some history. If you don't know who I'm talking about, you are a liar. But if you're a Patrick Star and live completely buried under a rock, I'll be quick. Batman is a popular superhero character that essentially is a rich dude known as Bruce Wayne, who dresses up like a bat person like it's Halloween every night and beats up the criminally insane. Around the end of the early 2000s, the character surged in popularity again. And of course, Warner Brothers was going to take advantage of that. I say again because, to make a comparison, as popular as Spider-Man is now in today's times, that is how popular Batman was before the late 90s in terms of film. In 1997, Batman and Robin came out. The movie did so poorly critically, superhero movies were just considered box office poison. The late 90s and early 2000s were caked with garbage superhero movies. That is, until the release of Blade, X-Men, and dear God. Unlike Marvel, who was providing CPR for 8 years straight to save the superhero film market, there was an 8-year gap of just silence in DC. The word was Ghost Protocol. After the release of the biggest film of 2002, the public perception of superhero films started to shift, and Warner Brothers saw the resurgence of decent superhero films that critics are loving, decided to take a chance again, and released not that one, or that one. Perfect. Third time's a charm. Batman Begins came out. It was pretty successful, doing pretty decent at the box office, and provided a good step forward for DC. Superman Returns came out right after and was equally as successful. And finally, The Dark Knight came out and has made over $1 billion at the box office and won 2 Oscars. The Dark Knight was the first comic book film to receive major industry awards. It broke many box office records and became the highest grossing film of 2008 and the highest grossing superhero film ever made at that time. Remember, this movie came out in a time when Fantastic Four, Catwoman, and Elektra were still around. So you know, when DC struck gold from this, they knew they needed to double down to make the perfect Batman video game. But this time, they wanted to do it right. If they wanted to ride these waves to the heavens, they needed to make a huge splash. Are we all caught up? Great. Back to what this video is supposed to be about. Eidos Interactive, now known as Eidos Montreal, was a video game publisher turned subsidiary by Square Enix. Until 2022, when they sold Eidos, Crystal Dynamics, and Square Enix Montreal for $300 million to focus on NFTs and AI. Yikes. Among its franchises were Deus Ex, Hitman, Thief, and Tomb Raider. In 2007, Eidos got the rights to make a Batman game and approached the small developer studio Rocksteady after viewing the prototype that they provided. Unfortunately, there is no playable build available due to the age and the fact that development builds are never really revealed unless it's in a specific showcase, but the models and icons were unearthed so we can observe and admire how ugly it is. Obviously, game models change over time, but it's always interesting to see the original designs that they work with for months before they settled on a final design. Some dedicated fans created a mod that restores the Batsuit's old textures, gadget icons, and a lot more found in the 2007 prototype build. I will include a link to the mod in the description and a card on the top right for a video discussing the prototype build in a lot more detail. By May, Rocksteady had begun developing the game's concept, with full production beginning in September 2007 with a 40-person team that expanded to 60 people by the project's conclusion. They had a video game aspect of the game ready to go. All they now needed was a story. Enter Paul Dini, who was a head writer in various Warner Brothers productions, notably Tiny Toons Adventures, Batman the Animated Series, Superman the Animated Series, and was a co-creator of Freakazoid. Oh yeah, he also invented Batman Beyond and Harley Quinn. I'm not kidding. If you didn't know, Harley Quinn and Terry McGinnis did not exist before Batman the Animated Series. Both characters were co-created between Paul Dini and series creator Bruce Timm exclusively for these shows and were later integrated into comics and larger forms of media. So yeah, kind of a big deal to work with this guy. Around late 2007, Dini was approached by DC about the idea of creating a completely original story for an original Batman video game. His reaction was along the lines of this.
Intriguing.
Dini believed that few Batman games were based on an original idea, instead being adapted from film or television. And he was right about that. Most other Batman games were based on an existing medium for the character from either film or TV. And most of them are not that good, I can assure you. Although the game features references to plot events in both the animated series and Batman comics, the story does not directly follow any singular story or depiction of the character, and instead is a completely original take on the character. Kind of like Lego Batman, which came out a year before and kind of looks like the Arkham version of Batman. DC asked Dini what his approach to writing a new Batman film or graphic novel would be if it was designed for gameplay. He later met with the Rocksteady team where it was decided that Dini's ideas were in line with what Rocksteady wanted to achieve. Before Dini joined development, Rocksteady was already toying with the idea of having the setting of the game take place within Arkham Asylum. They had some concept designs depicting the asylum as a huge estate on an island connected to Gotham City by a bridge. Grant Morrison's Arkham Asylum, a serious house on Seeker's Earth, was an inspiration for the game's design. The asylum was chosen as the setting because it confined the player to an area containing several enemies. Rocksteady wanted to avoid having Batman in a setting where he could receive help, return to the Batcave, or otherwise be able to distance himself from his opponents. It sounds a bit weird, but it's sort of good that they did this. Have you seen prior Batman games where you could explore? Not to mention, they are already trying to include so much of the Batman mythos into the game, his detective skills, his ninja skills, stuff like that. Them having to worry about an open environment would just have complicated development even further. It was way better for them to fine-tune the gameplay in a closed environment. Another reason why they had the asylum as a setting is because it could easily house all of Batman's rogues gallery and have them work together towards a common goal: take control and escape the asylum. For the cast, they decided very early on in development to have the late Kevin Conroy, Arlene Sorkin, as well as Mark Hamill reprise their roles in Dini's Batman the Animated Series as Batman, the Joker, and Harley Quinn. Because of the history the three actors had together, immediately they already had their own vision on how the characters will bounce off and interact with each other, which really lended itself well to what Rocksteady was already trying to accomplish. Hamill has thousands of lines of dialogue in the game, probably because Joker is on every screen and took over the speakers, so you will always hear and see him, meaning Kevin Conroy has relatively few in comparison. After seeing character models of Joker's Arkham Asylum appearance, Hamill decided to portray the character a lot more dark and gritty than how he's usually portrayed. In the animated series, the Joker is already pretty dark, but it is still a kids' TV show that was broadcasting on Fox, so you know the FCC was breathing down their pants. Since the developers didn't need to worry about studio censors, certain inmates were allowed to be let loose. Once they had all the pieces together, it was finally time to develop a video game. The game and story were developed together with the limitations of the gameplay in mind, requiring the story to be built around it. At the same time, Rocksteady would help Dini keep the game balanced if he would write too much story or character motivation. The team wanted to make something very refined to make sure every element of the game worked hand in hand to complement each other. According to producer Nathan Burlow, the narrative and atmosphere of the 2007 game BioShock influenced Arkham Asylum's design. Which makes total sense, because BioShock came out 2 years earlier and was currently destroying the optics around video games due to how influential the game was for its design and story, meaning other games were certainly going to replicate it. According to director Stephen Hill, the influences of the gadgets and abilities that can be combined and used in different ways came from The Legend of Zelda and Metroid. Unlike certain Batman games of the past, Arkham Asylum has a lot more freedom in the movements and abilities that Batman possessed. In the game, Batman can run, jump, climb, crouch, and glide using his cape. He was finally given a good grapple gun for climbing and escaping that is used in multiple settings. Until the game decides that you can't do that and forces you to manually scale a structure like if you're playing Uncharted. On the other hand, the game embodied the stealth of Batman, and was a lot more forgiving than other stealth games like Splinter Cell and Thief. Speaking of embodying Batman, the developers included a detective vision to highlight important objects, NPCs, and secrets. Very useful considering there are over 240 collectible items, including Riddler trophies, Joker teeth, and inmate interview tapes. Collecting these items rewards players with experience points and additional content. The Arkham series introduced the free flow combat system, which involves attacking and countering enemy attacks in a stream of motion, allowing Batman to move between enemies and knock them out fluidly. And let me tell you, this is just very fun. Whenever Rocksteady was cooking, they were steaming because they were somehow able to invent a way to make a satisfying combat system. Whenever you get a chance, play the game and do the free flow combat challenge maps because you will enter a flow state. A symphony of broken bones and broken dreams. Between the gadget stuff and breaking the bones of countless Arkham inmates, the design team isolated the components that they felt made Batman and exaggerated these elements. You see, the team wanted you to feel the exaggerated swagger of an absolute unit that punches mental inmates until their spinal fluid leaks out of their ears.
I can't leave all this rubber in progress.
Very specific goals the team had. They wanted to stay true to its character and let the gameplay enforce that. As an example, his refusal to kill his enemies was strictly enforced. Still didn't mean he couldn't brutalize them first. They negated that by saying that the enemies are unconscious.
You've seen what this stuff does!
Right. This allowed the player to have complete freedom in the game without crossing the line of who Batman is. Rocksteady wanted this game to serve as a love letter to Batman as a whole, and included many iconic aspects of the Batman mythos throughout the game through hidden details or Riddler puzzles. Mostly Riddler puzzles. Combat was considered one of the greatest challenges in developing the game. The system went through 3 iterations. Rocksteady originally developed the game's combat as a full rhythm action game. It was later set in 2D, which involved colored circles crashing into each other during fights. The final system was based on this 2D model. Combat was designed to be unique for Batman, and was given a simple control scheme to reflect the ease of which Batman can perform combat. Arkham Asylum was built on Epic Games' Unreal Engine 3. According to Eidos president Ian Livingstone, one developer spent over 2 years working on Batman's cape, using over 700 animations and sound effects to make it move and sound realistically. I cannot verify that is true or not, try as I might. I searched for a pretty long while, but I couldn't find any clues to get the developer's name, but his cape is pretty fabulous, so time well spent. The game's overall aesthetic is a mixture of realism with comic book style, much like the style of Serious House on Serious Earth. The influence of this comic is very blatant. The game even features collectible audio tapes of the Asylum's founder, Amadeus Arkham, and adapts various elements of the comic within the game. Because of this, Arkham Asylum is the most like a comic book in terms of style. Characters are completely over the top and cartoony, but still have a realistic edge to them, making sure to stay true to the style of the Batman universe. As the series and technology continued to progress and advance, it switched to focusing on a more realistic style. In Arkham Asylum, developers wanted to create environmental architectures to recreate the dark gothic imagery inherent to the Batman universe, especially Arkham Asylum, so that the structure would feel as insane as those whom it houses. Batman's design was heavily influenced by the work of comic artist Jim Lee, who drew Batman as a strong, muscular character who could believably take part in extreme but fluid combat. In the art that I'm showing right now, the Batsuit has a very different design than what is used in the base game story. This is the Armored Suit, an alternate suit that can be used in challenge maps, but thanks to mods on PC, you're able to use the suit in story mode, especially if you're doing an Arkham run playing through every single game. The Armored Suit fits the aesthetics of the future games really well, so if you want some cohesion, I would say give it a try. In the meantime, why don't you guys try to see if the like and subscribe button works. Anyways, I'm getting off track. His black and dark gray costume was based on more modern depictions and had a military influence with an industrial look. Approximately 13 concept designs were produced before his final appearance took form. Wildstorm, Lee's comic book publishing company, produced concept art for the game. Artists avoided film interpretations of the Joker, partly because the developers only had access to the rights to the original Batman license. So, anything other than the comics were off the table. This concept art that showcased Joker having scars where his smile was had too much of a resemblance to Heath Ledger's Joker and was scrapped as a result. Alan Moore's 1988 graphic novel, Batman the Killing Joke, influenced the character's design. Instead of modernizing Joker, they just stuck to his title of being the Clown Prince of Crime and let that enforce the art direction. Harley Quinn underwent a drastic redesign. Gone was her classic black and red full body outfit and jester's hat, and replacing them with a costume with design elements from a nurse's outfit and a schoolgirl uniform. Both Joker and Harley had a hospital theme going on, with Joker even carrying a tank of venom as if it was an oxygen tank. But only Harley retained this original concept. Honestly, we had the Arkham series to thank for the current version of Harley that we have now. Her current design in comics was heavily based on her Arkham Asylum designs. Mostly Arkham City, though we'll talk about that a little bit more when the time is right. Designs for the asylum departed from the usual interpretations of a large mansion somewhere deep in Gotham City, and instead developed an entire island with hints of Alcatraz prison, composed of multiple buildings to allow for a greater variety and exploration. With the amount of detail they provided to the game, the asylum as a whole is its own character. The medical building was inspired by Victorian architecture, and its metalwork structure was intended to inspire feelings of horror. Unless you constantly have detective vision on, you will never know what's around each corner. The intensive treatment unit has a gothic industrial aesthetic, like it's out of a Universal monster movie. The catacombs beneath the facility, inspired by early 20th century brickwork and Victorian industry, which were meant to feel oppressive. The maximum security area was designed to feel claustrophobic and was retrofitted like a bunker. And the Arkham Mansion displays a high Gothic style with grand hallways and libraries. 40 rooms, 34 corridors, 3 exterior areas, and 3 scarecrow-induced hallucination areas were designed for the game. To anticipate the game's release, Rocksteady released demos on PS3 and Xbox 360 in early August 2009. The PS3 version of the game would receive priority release, having more bonus content available than the Xbox 360 version with console-exclusive DLC, like Joker being a playable character and exclusive challenge maps. Eventually, the DLC would be available on every platform. Additionally, GameStop ran a contest that allowed one winner to be rendered in-game as the Arkham inmate. And that lucky winner was Luke Oliver. Mr. Oliver can be seen kept within the penitentiary control room alongside another, more infamous inmate. And while looking at Joker's party list, his name is listed at the bottom. A series of action figures based on the character's design from the game were released through Warner Bros. Outlet DC Direct. Then, something amazing happened. Batman Arkham Asylum was released for PS3 and Xbox 360 in North America on August 25, 2009, and was released on Windows a month later. There was a Nintendo Wii and DS port being developed by Redfly Studios, but unfortunately was cancelled during development. These games are more in line with how classic Batman games used to be, unrefined and fairly clunky. But I think there is a level of charm. I like seeing multiple versions of the same game, because I'm weird like that, and I enjoy seeing different gameplay concepts. There is some footage of both ports available on YouTube, so I implore you to go check them out. Immediately, the game received critical acclaim. The game was called one of the best comic book superhero games ever made by various media outlets, including Metacritic, Spike TV, MTV, ACL, CBS, BBC, DVD, and the Guinness Book of World Records. Outlets highlighted the design, fluid combat, and balance between the gameplay and story, and masterful voice acting, particularly from Mark Hamill. Just like how Death Stranding was considered the walking simulator, Arkham Asylum was considered the Batman simulator. See how I was able to bring it back to the intro? Many reviewers were able to pick up and identify the inspiration for various gameplay elements, particularly from BioShock and Metroid. One of the only unanimous sources of criticism is for the boss fights. It was identified as the game's largest low points. Reviewers and players found the boss fights very tedious and just didn't allow room for you to improvise and use the different gadgets and abilities you gain throughout the game. probably because every boss is essentially the same. Stun the enemy running towards you, get rid of any grunt work enemies, and attack the main one. Do that 6 more times, and you got yourself a video game. However, the Fear Toxin Scarecrow battles were widely praised as some of the game's best moments because of how much it messes with the players and breaks the fourth wall. I will not explain any further because I want you guys to experience it blind if you haven't already. But if you have already, you know what I'm talking about. While the other voice cast was highly praised, Hamill's performance received consistent praise, with reviewers citing that his performance steals the show. It's been said that Dini and Hamill's Joker was the best depiction of the character outside of the Killing Joke and Heath Ledger's incarnation in The Dark Knight. No one asked, but my favorite Joker is John DiMaggio Joker for Under the Red Hood. Him and Ledger's Joker are just consistently funny and menacing at the same time. Anyways, this was perfect for Warner Brothers. They were finally able to get people to forget about Batman's troubled past into a character that everyone loved again. With the Dark Knight series and Arkham series together, Batman finally became cool again to the general audience. Within 3 weeks, the game sold nearly 2 million units worldwide. By December 2009, the PlayStation 3 version had outsold the Xbox 360 version by around 10,000 units, likely due to the exclusive content featuring the Joker as a playable character. By October 2011, 2 years after its release, it had sold 4.3 million copies worldwide. A Game of the Year edition was released on March 26, 2010, which included the game, 3D support with 3D glasses because every game was trying to bank on 3D at that period of time, and bonus challenge maps, some of which were exclusive only to Europe. A collector's edition was eventually released. It contained the game, a 14-inch replica of Batman's Batarang, behind-the-scenes DVD, a leather-bound 48-page book about Arkham's inmates, and a code to download a bonus challenge maps. A lot of challenge maps this game has. To prevent piracy on the Windows version of the game, the developers used anti-piracy measures that disables Batman's glide ability and causes other bugs, which prevented copied games from progressing. Rocksteady began planning the sequel, Batman Arkham City, about 7 months before finishing Arkham Asylum. They developed the story and setting to connect the narratives of both games. A secret room with hints and concept art for the sequel was hidden somewhere in the asylum. Your detective vision couldn't sense the room and was hidden so well that Rocksteady had to leak it just to get players interested. To summarize, when this game came out, it was constantly being glazed up. Now, if you want my professional opinion, yes, the game is good. However, playing the game in 2024 shows its age. This game is not going to play as well compared to the sequels, but it still holds up. But as someone who's more used to the more modern and cleaned up Arkham gameplay, it does feel awkward to play at times. As for the story, it's mid. It's just an Arkham breakout and you're trying to figure out what Joker's big plan is while running into video game bullshit. It is as simple as a plot as you can get, but I think it's all it needs to be. I'm not saying it's bad, it's just mid. There are things spread out that make it interesting, but that's really what it is at its core. I personally just love the little details that are spread throughout the game. The audio tapes, Riddler's riddles, and even just reading random documents on the ground help build this game up from what could have been a super generic Batman game into something much more. And without it, so many huge games that we know of would just not exist, at least not in the way that we know of now. Assassin's Creed Syndicate and Unity, Sleeping Dogs, the Middle-earth games all took the fast-paced combat and implemented it, making it their own, or just copying directly from Arkham Asylum. Ghost of Tsushima certainly took inspiration from the stealth mechanics from throughout the Arkham series and Assassin's Creed. And finally, the big one. The Amazing Spider-Man is pretty much... What do you mean it's wrong game? Oh, okay, the other one. Got it, sorry. Alright. The Amazing Spider-Man 2's combat and stealth... What now? Still the wrong game? Does it really matter? They all play the same anyways, kinda. The other one's more popular? Fine, whatever. Marvel Spider-Man for 2018 clearly took major inspiration from the Arkham series. Like, come on. I'm sure we all know this. I'm sure you guys can find countless videos on how Arkham Asylum changed the state of video games, but I'm not spending too much time on that. I'm just including it briefly because a development history video should always talk about the legacy that it left. Oh yeah, I did say that this game changed the Batman mythos, didn't I? Well, I'm running out of time and I need content to fill for Arkham City, so I will just include that in the next Arkham video. It'll be a lot more fitting that way. I'm writing the script for Arkham City and a few other videos at the same time as I'm editing this one, so I will try to be a lot more consistent with my uploads. I think I'll probably have around 2 to 3 more videos out by the end of the year, but no promises. This took me 8 months to get out. Like, share, talk about the video in the comments, do whatever. But I'd like to thank all of those who watched even a single minute of this video. Truly, thank you, and stay tuned.